Guess what? I built a custom table for my wife's crafting room. Check it out. I like to find ways to be useful to others. I find it more satisfying than driving my own projects, and more to the point, I find that I'm quite content and lazy when left to my own devices. So that led me to make this table for my wife, and I'm going to walk you through my process as a total rookie builder, and all the cool skills that I learned along the way. During COVID, my wife and her mom have been sewing up a storm. First to make a bunch of cotton masks to give to friends and family and coworkers. And then they got more ambitious and started making their own clothing. They even made me this whole outfit, plus a Spider-Man mask. My secret power is making the whole world smell like my mouth. My wife bought a large cutting mat for fabric, but the only workspace for it was on this low coffee table, and we had to put a piece of plywood under the mat just to make it fit. The awkward height, bad fit, and it was kind of a bad use of space in the craft room, made this kind of a bad situation all around. So, my mission, to make a table for her that fit the 4x3 cutting mat and had some storage space. It would be a standing height for a 5-foot tall person. So I had a nice boost of motivation to this project. I could improve my wife's crafting space, and I could learn a bunch of new skills, and how hard could it be? I love a project that requires skills that I don't possess. I find that those projects are more interesting than projects where I kind of already know how to do everything. And man, this one was a doozy. I came in knowing very little, just a basic understanding of carpentry. And it turns out that furniture making and cabinetry, they're like kind of a whole thing. I need to apologize in advance to all the woodworkers watching. You're about to see a lot of rookie mistakes, and you may experience pain and redness in your forehead due to acute exasperation. Starting with the tabletop at a known size and taking some measurements of counters in relation to my wife's elbows, I had a known table height of about 32.5 inches. I decided that the storage shelves could go on each side and I could make them a good size. So I thought I'll make them out of 1x12s. And thinking about efficiency, I thought, why not make all the legs and shelves out of the same materials? And that gave me 1x12 legs as well. From that basic drawing, I realized that I kind of suck at basic drawing. A friend recommended TinkerCAD. And after watching a few videos and experimenting, I had my first draft. By the way, I recommend checking TinkerCAD out if you need to design something. It's free and web-based, so you can run it on just about anything. As you can see, my first draft wasn't much to look at, but the general idea was there. I got feedback on this design from a few friends and family that know a lot more than me, and I made some adjustments that both made the design more stylish and more functional, like raising the bottom shelf up off the ground and setting the legs in an inch or so. Also, I needed to add a back plane for shear strength. I was cautioned that making a drawer on rails would be quite difficult for a novice like me, but I kind of drafted it anyway, feeling cocky with my new 3D design skills, and only to get the drawer nixed by the wife. She felt that the drawer would only get filled with junk, closed, and then never opened again. This was a good reminder that the main benefit of custom designing a piece of furniture was to make it exactly how the end user wants it. Next, I saw that the legs and shelves could all be the same length, 32 inches. Thinking that this uniform size might save me some work, I don't think that that ended up mattering much, except that it was easy to remember the measurements. Lastly, I thought I could attach the shelves with brackets and leave the legs a nice pristine wood finish on the outside. I'll put a link to my design in the description if you want to check it out. Time to go to the hardware store. I went with 1/2-inch good quality plywood for the top and found that as a 4x4 sheet. The legs and shelves were harder. I wanted to use some nice wood for them, but the pricing and my haste led me to pick some cheaper poplar wood for the legs and some pre-primed MDF for the shelves. In hindsight, probably not the best choices. 32 inches is a bit long for an MDF shelf and might eventually sag. Also, my wood choice created extra work for me, and next time I think I should either spend a lot less money and use veneered plywood, or spend a lot more money and have some really nice hardwood to show off. The next morning, I drove in with gusto. After all, I basically knew how to saw boards and sand and paint, and how hard could it be? Vroom, vroom, power tools, skill saw, freehand. And then sanding. Lots of sanding. Sanding and sanding. Vroom, vroom. I started to remember things though, like wood is delicate and you have to baby it. So putting it on that cinder block and banging it around left some pretty serious dings and scuffs in the wood. This is definitely a profession for perfectionists and careful hands. The poplar wood had this ugly greenish yellow color, and my wife wanted a dark stain for the wood. And here's where I hit my first real learning roadblock. The extent of my knowledge there was you put stains on wood and it changes the color. So that's when I discovered Steve Ramsey's YouTube channel. He's got a ton of great woodworking videos, and if you haven't seen them, it's totally worth checking out. He had a good one on staining and finishing wood, and that led me down a YouTube rabbit hole, and also realizing that I probably should have done a little more research before diving in and cutting stuff. That probably would have helped. I guess I'm a bit of a sucker for the Dunning-Kruger effect, whereby expertise and confidence can be graphed like this, where knowing a little makes you very confident, and then as you learn more, your confidence level dips. Knowing a little bit about a lot of things is basically my catchphrase. So, another trip to the hardware store. Got me some pre-stain treatment for the wood to keep it from getting splotchy. And I laid that in and applied the first coat of the dark mahogany stain using a cloth. And look at that color. Really nice. It's a very satisfying kind of painting that's also revealing more of what's underneath. My wife got home and I showed off my progress. She asked if she could do some engraving and carving on the designs of the legs. While that might run counter to the idea of a slick, smooth wood finish, I went with it because it's her table and she can make it look the way that she wants. It was a good reminder to stay humble and not allow my ego to get into the project. And also, I had already done plenty of damage to the wood, so nowhere to go but up. She also helped with the second coat of the stain, trying to darken some of the areas more than others. That ended up being a pretty subtle effect, but it was interesting to try. Day 3. The project hits the ground running. And not really in the good way, kind of like running and kind of on the ground and tumbling and like falling off a motorcycle. Like, I wake up. The wife says, "Our friends are coming over Saturday to do some craft projects and to see the table." Check my calendar. It's Thursday morning. Counting days in my head. That's not much time. That's like really not much time. That's like work every day at breakneck speed, and maybe I can finish by Friday so it has time to dry for Saturday. Shit. Side note, I should mention that this was not a command or anything. She said that if it wasn't done, they could use the kitchen table, no big deal. But I decided to give it my best shot to finish in time. The tabletop was going to need a long time to dry, so I gave the plywood a coat of primer, lightly sanded again, and got to painting. Already I was running out of space in the breezeway, so I turned 2 chairs and an umbrella into a makeshift painting station in the yard, and I read the can of semi-gloss latex paint, and it said, "Use a brush and not a roller." And dang it, I let the can boss me around. Using a roller would have likely been fine and a lot faster, especially because the plywood wasn't all that smooth and the finish was going to be mostly covered up by the cutting mat. Still, I spent hours painting with a brush like a jerk. Hand brushing the shelves likely had the desired effect of a smooth finish. But I managed to rip and mangle and otherwise kind of botch up by letting it get stuck to things and each other, and I learned pretty quickly that when latex paint feels dry, it isn't really dry. I read the can of polyurethane and it says you can only apply 1 coat every 8 hours, and you should sand in between. And I doubted I had that kind of time. So then I watched more Steve Ramsey videos. He says, Spray lacquer is quick and easy, and he uses it for everything. Back to the hardware store for spray lacquer. Start spraying, and luckily I found the respirator. And thankfully so, because spray lacquer was the classic devil's bargain. It's super fast and easy, but it stinks up the place with really poisonous chemicals, so safety first. Day 4. I'm in over my head. So much painting. I should have just used spray paint and been done with it. I talked with my friend who's a bit of an expert builder, and he ended up acting as sort of unofficial engineer for the project. I showed him my finalized design with all my brackets in place and everything, and he flunked me. Not enough shear strength, especially for a craft table that would be leaned on and put to serious use. We ran down the list of materials I had in the garage, and we settled on adding a large piece of 3¼ inch plywood at the top and a toe kick at the bottom. As well as he suggested that I drop the brackets because they wouldn't provide much shear support strength, especially in the MDF. And so I changed the design to have everything screw in from the sides. Short of doing some fancy joinery and advanced woodworker stuff, the screws were going to give me the best functionality. And, if I hadn't been in a rush and, been kind of hack jobbing this together, I might have had other better options. But I reminded myself, the function needed to be top of the list for this project. Then, my friend asked me a question that threw the whole thing into doubt. He asked, "So, how are you keeping everything square?" And I was like, "What do you mean square?" I draw a line and I cut it with a circular saw. You're gonna have to check all those edges and cuts to be square if you want everything to fit together. Crap. I spent another session watching Steve Ramsey and others on YouTube talking about how to cut straight, and basically the answer I found was, duh, use a table saw, which I don't have. Now, especially, that I needed to rip that plywood in order to get the right sizes for my shear supports. I had some ripping to do. I got pretty frustrated trying to clamp down boards to use as a makeshift rip fence. I had the most success using a drywall T-square I found in the garage. That's not great. It was very slow going, and before I try ripping boards again, I think I'll buy one of those clamp-on rail guide things. And I've already since bought a speed square for future cross-cutting. Lesson learned. Sweaty, sweaty lesson learned. Day 5. Party day. Party day? I started the day with all the pieces ready. They just needed assembling, but things were not quite lining up, and sprawled out on the floor, I saw just how much I was in over my head and how, cutting things square is kind of a whole thing. So, I reached out to my expert friend again, and I'm like, "This sucks, woodworking is hard." And he said, "Well, yes, of course." But being a nice guy, he offered to show up early for the party and help me assemble the project. Friend came over, he saw my pieces, and very graciously complimented me on all my progress. But once he examined all of my cuts, he says, "You call that a square?" Now, I don't have much footage from the party because we were having fun, and my friends didn't really want to be filmed. Needless to say, he recut all the legs and shelves square for me. He removed about 1/4 to 1/2 inch from the design all over. But once he did, it was just a matter of measuring, leveling, squaring, drilling pilot holes, countersinking them, screwing in the screws. He very generously helped me get the table to a minimum viable table state, and that after that all was left for me was to install the final shelves and the toe kick. The shelves and supports were screwed in from the side with the table upside down, and then the tabletop was screwed in down through the legs. A crude but strong solution. I felt kind of bad putting my friend to work, and kind of let down that I needed someone else to come in and finish my project for me. That, maybe it wasn't really my project anymore. But after some thought, I've come around on that. First, I did do a lot of work on this, and a lot of that work was doing new things, learning new skills, and pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Second, I made something. I wanted to change something in my house, in my world, and I changed it. And that's the mindset of a maker. And I should feel proud to just make something. something even kind of low quality, because I made it, and that makes me a maker. And lastly, and probably most importantly, I fulfilled the mission. I improved my wife's cutting room, and well, she loved it. I got the final shelves and the toe kick installed the next day, and now it's done, and we can marvel at its final form. I hope you find this story inspiring enough to learn a new skill and try something new. Make something that changes your world and improves the lives of the people around you. And also remember that it's okay to let other people help you. All right, I plan to make some more videos, so get subscribed if you'd like to see that. A lot of my previous videos I made for the nonprofit Steamhead, so go over to that channel if you want to see those. And thanks for watching. Bye-bye.